All right, what's up, everybody? We are back. We've got a little episode here for you today. I was thinking this whole episode would be about Iran and President Trump's big announcement and all this, and then we got a whole lot of nothing there. So we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to talk about a very exciting topic here. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court. But we're going to try and spice it up a little bit. They had an interesting case in front of them today. They are listening to a case that would nullify birthright citizenship. This whole idea that if you're born on American soil, it doesn't matter how your parents got here or anything like that, you can be a citizen. So Republicans are trying to get rid of that because it's been used by Democrats as a political tool to increase their base, increase the welfare state, because what they've done is opened the border so tens of millions of people could come in here, and then all they have to do is have a kid. And then you're not allowed to deport them anymore because their kid is now an American citizen. The kid now can get all sorts of welfare, can get the family into subsidized housing, tax credits, all sorts of stuff. So what we've effectively done here is created this loophole where in a democracy, what's supposed to happen is you vote for your representatives who go create the immigration law, and then it's enforced. Presidents put their hand on a Bible, swear to enforce the law, and they're supposed to do it. And it just happens that way. So we have a system. You have to, if you want to immigrate here, you have to go through a process. You've got to pay for the process. You have to take a test. You have to learn English. There's all sorts of stuff you have to do. But that's been completely bypassed, thrown to the side. And what happened is Joe Biden and other Democrat presidents before him have committed treason by choosing not to enforce our laws, betraying the citizens of our republic for foreigners, the definition of treason. And the way they've done that is just by ignoring the immigration law and then say, hey, and once you're here and you have a kid, you and your whole family are allowed to stay and no one can ever question that. And what they use is the 14th Amendment, which was an amendment that was passed shortly after the Civil War that said anybody born here is a citizen. And the reason they had to do that was because for a very long time when there was slavery in the United States, obviously the slaves weren't considered people, they were considered property, and property can't have citizenship. So after the Civil War, they said, okay, one of the ways the South is going to try and get around the slaves being free now is they're just not going to give them citizenship. They're going to try and make it the former slaves these second-class citizens who can't vote. So the northern states preempted that, passed this amendment that said, hey, we're going to get around this whole thing by saying if you were born here, then you can be a citizen. And the text of the 14th Amendment is ambiguous. The author of the 14th Amendment said, let's see here, let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. Here, I think I've got it on my phone. Here we go. In regards to the 14th Amendment, saying this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers, but will include every other class of persons. So, right there, it doesn't apply to aliens because they were trying to find a way to make all the former slaves citizens. It makes perfect sense. What it was never intended for was our society to end up this, large welfare state, this advanced first world country that then admits tens of millions of people against the will of its citizens and then allows them all to stay and have American citizen children. That's not what this amendment was for, clearly. How could, in 1860 something, how could you have ever thought that that would be the future? No, nobody, if you were in the American government back then, like, why would you ever think your elected representatives, even 100 years, 150 years in the future, would hate your country so much they would do something like that, flood it with foreigners against the people's will. The founders didn't see that coming. Even the second founders, they didn't see it. But maybe they should have. It's tough because the way they wrote these amendments back in the day, the language is so ambiguous. They use so much punctuation that it allows people now, dubious actors, to obscure the interpretations and say, no, the 14th Amendment the whole time was so we could bring the whole third world to the United States. And obviously that's a lie, and nobody should be wanting that, but they do because there's political gain for it. It's ridiculous that someone could sneak into the United States and have a kid, and now Americans are somehow responsible for providing all the social services that American children's get to that child, because now that child is considered American citizen. It's like if I went and like bought a bunch of shit on Amazon, but I was standing on your front porch, and then I just said, "Oh no, you know what? You have to pay for all this now. Sorry, I'm gonna get all the stuff I ordered, but you're gonna have to pay for it." That's exactly what it's like. These people just show up here and then expect you to support their family. I mean, I think we've said on here, $150 billion is lost in social services to illegal immigrants every year. That's the estimate, and we don't even really know because we don't actually know how many there are. We know at least 10 million came in since 2020. Not a lot of net taxpayers there. These people are coming in from the poorest parts of the world, and we're supposed to expect they all could come here and be doctors and engineers. You know, the lies that the left tells us. It's insane. Like, yeah, sure. All Venezuela is sending all their doctors and lawyers here, and we're just supposed to believe that. Now, don't worry. You're never going to see any of these doctors or lawyers. You're just going to have to believe they're there. All those, people that are on welfare and need all sorts of assistance, ignore that. That's just the few couple. No, they're statistically non-existent, as our good friend over on Spotify would say. Just focus on the doctors and lawyers. That's it. That's all you're supposed to do. Our current laws are made, okay, the way they're exploiting the 14th Amendment in our immigration laws, it's meant to encourage tens of millions of poor people to come here. And what we would have to do with our laws right now, as the way everything's written, our entire southern border would have to be an impenetrable fortress, because the way the laws are right now, people could just run across the border, have the kid, and say, "Oh, that's it. You can't deport me now." That's the way our laws are written. That's what our leaders want from us. It's insane. Well, why would we ever burden ourselves that way? That we would have to fortify 1,000 miles of our border to make sure we're obeying our own immigration law or something. It's ridiculous. The whole idea that we're just going to twist ourselves into knots for foreigners is insane. And so then those kids come, they need social services, and then it's just, they're the responsibility of the state. You have to pay for their housing, you have to pay for their schools, you have to pay for their health care, you have to pay for their food, you have to pay for their Obama phones, everything. You got to pay for it because they were able to make it here and have a kid. And that kid now, American citizen, can't leave. And keep in mind, no country in Europe does this. No country in Asia does this. No country in Africa has any of these laws. You have some laws that are something similar in South America, but they're not as stringent as ours. They don't allow 10 million people to come parading across the border of Argentina. They would never tolerate that shit. They would have their leaders strung up before they allowed something like that. Absolutely insane. But then the left, that's what they want. They've now got this base of poor people who are dependent on the state, and that base keeps growing and growing with every millions of migrants they bring in. They would then all have their children, and all those families, they're dependent on the welfare state, and they raise children who are going to vote to expand the welfare state because that's what they grew up on. That's what they think they need. And they look back and say, hey, all these other poor people, they need that too. Vote for the welfare state. Make the government bigger. 20 trillion or I think $40 trillion in debt now. That's not enough because they don't care. They're like, whatever. If shit goes bad, we milk this place for all it is. We can go back. It's all about opportunity for the individual. Here, how much and it's this way, not just of foreigners trying to come here, but the elites in our country too. Just milk it for all you can, load it up with debt, and then jump ship right at the right time. That's the strategy they've got right now. So you bring in these tens of millions of people, and culturally in Central, South America, Mexico, what happens is parents have lots of kids, and those kids are expected to support their parents in their retirement because one day their parents aren't going to be able to work. The parents aren't saving money. They're having, 27 children, and those kids are expected to support them. Here in the United States, we have something completely different. Americans are expected to save. And then even if you don't save as much as you should, we have the Social Security safety net. And then worst case scenario, we've got Medicare, all these programs for people that are older so that they can retire and kids don't have to support them. And then hopefully you work hard and you have a good life to where you leave something for your kids at the end. We pass wealth down through the generations. At least if you ignore the Ponzi scheme Social Security, is that's what we try to do here. But the culture that these, tens of millions of people are coming from is completely different. They hand money up the generations, not down. So when you get tens of millions of these people in your country, you have the social disconnect. You've got millions and millions of people who are going to be getting old, who, just came here in the last couple decades, all the way up until 2024 when the border finally got shut down, and they're going to have to retire. They have no retirement savings, nothing, zero. And so what's going to happen is the kids, they see, all their friends who are from the United States, and they go, hey, my friends aren't having to support their parents. Why should I? You know who should have to support my parents? The state. That's how you end up with immigrants being able to get on Medi-Cal. That's how you end up with all sorts of different welfare programs paid for by citizens to illegal immigrants. That's how this whole thing ends, is the people come here, they work, they send the money back to whatever country they're from, they help their kids come here, their uncles, their cousins, everyone, and then whenever they have children that can vote or they get amnesty, whatever, then they vote to expand the welfare state. So they don't have to support their families. They want you and your kids to support them. That's how this whole thing works. It's all about expanding the welfare state. You think they're going to get here and all of a sudden all of them are going to become the doctors that we're told they already are? And then just, support the country, support themselves. They're all going to be net taxpayers. No, of course not. You can't bring in millions and millions of poor people and expect your country to get richer. That's why we got to rethink this whole citizenship thing. This whole thing about, having a birthright, being born here. No, I'm sorry. You can't sneak across and then have a kid and, I'm on home base. And the whole argument's kind of ridiculous anyways. The Democrats that are defending this whole birthright thing, they don't even believe in birthright to this land. They think the land's stolen. How can you have birthright to a stolen land? It's absolutely nuts. It doesn't make any sense. You try and use their own logic on them, they'll twist themselves into pretzels. Well, yeah, the land is stolen and only the Native Americans have a right to it, but so do the people from Belize that just got here last week. Those people are just as American as you and me, whose families have been here forever. But nope, if you try and bring up, hey, I actually have been here a really long time. What are my birthrights? You don't have any. Those are just rights you stole from Native Americans. No illegal people on stolen land. The whole logic, it makes no sense, even pitted against itself. And well, I've got some videos here of not Karine Jean-Pierre, the wonderful press secretary. We have some footage here from our favorite Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the legal scholar of our country. No one smarter has ever graced the Supreme Court than Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ignore the whole thing about how, Joe Biden said he only picked her because she was a black woman and, how great DEI is, all that kind of stuff. Ignore all that, please. And instead, focus focus on her words, her actions, just how intelligent she is.
I was thinking about this, and I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. That's what everybody recognizes. But you also have local allegiance when you are on the soil of this other sovereign. And I was thinking, I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law? I can also rely on them if my...
In case you didn't track that logic, which I'll admit was pretty tough, I had to listen to that about 5 times to even begin to pick out what she was trying to say. What she's going for there is because the argument that the Trump administration is making is that if you come here and commit a crime, by coming here illegally is a crime. You therefore have no allegiance to this country. You aren't set up here permanently because you legally can't be here. So how could this be your permanent domicile? And so what wonderful Justice Jackson is saying here is, well, but if you come here and commit a crime, that's kind of like allegiance to the country. Like you've done something in the country, so now you get to stay because now there's some legal tie here. You see, you go to a country and commit a crime, now you're in their legal system. Now you have to be afforded all the rights anybody else in that legal system has to be afforded, which is just the most retarded shit I've ever heard. And I love that she uses the example that if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me. I'm still locally owing allegiance in that sense. You owe allegiance because you stole somebody's shit. It's like breaking into somebody's house and stealing their stuff and then claiming you're now a part of their family and that you get to live in their house now. It's the most ass backwards, insane shit I've ever heard. Here we go. We can listen to her speak a little more on the same subject, but she wants to put it.
Help us understand why we didn't expect to see a mention, and your view of this turns on what the status of the parents are, and not the child, as would the born in the United States view of it. How can you help us understand why we wouldn't expect to see a mention of parents in the text of this amendment?
I think it's well understood that, for example, children cannot, newborns cannot form domicile. So it follows every 19th century.
That assumes domicile is in the test. And I'm asking you, how do we know?
So ignore for a second, if you can, that it sounds like Trump's got RFK representing him in court. Trump was actually here at this hearing, by the way. But what she's saying there is that, why can't children be considered, to having established permanent domicile? And the lawyer's like, well, children can't build houses. They can't buy houses. They can't set up their own lives by definition. They're minors, they're children. So they don't have an established residence here because, again, they're fucking newborns. And so if you have a 6-month-old that's born here and then they ended up and you deport the parents and the kid goes with them or something, that kid's life isn't like their whole established time here hasn't been uprooted. They have no roots here. They don't have children of their own here. Again, they're 6 months. They don't have jobs here that our economy relies on. There's nothing a 6-month-old is domiciled here for that is a benefit to our country. So the only argument that you can make to leave a kid like that here in a family that shouldn't be here and is being sent back is that it's good for the kid. There's no argument even that you should be they're not even making an argument that it's good for the country, it's good for the citizens, anything like that. They're just saying, hey, it's good for the migrants, so we should have to deal with it. Yeah, are the social services going to bankrupt the country? Sure. I mean, whatever. Who worries about details like that? Is it completely upend our country's culture? Yeah, maybe, but whatever. White people suck anyways. We should just, outbreed them into extinction and replace them all. So whatever. Why are we hung up on all these little details? Let the 5 billion foreigners come in. The country will be richer. The more poor people we bring, the richer we will get, obviously. That's the argument that is being made here. And by the way, that genius lady there, the if I steal a wallet in Japan, I now owe allegiance to the country because I've committed I'm now invested in their criminal justice system or something. That lady speaks more than every male Supreme Court justice combined on the court. Something about, stupid people trying to make up for it by talking a lot. Something about it. I don't know why. You make your own guesses. You can draw your own conclusions from the evidence of your eyes and ears if this lady belongs on the Supreme Court or if she was only chosen for her gender and race. I don't know. There was just another opinion where she gets called out by Justice Kagan. The stalwart conservative Justice Kagan had to call out KGB because she had KBJ, pardon me, because she had ruled earlier this week that in an 8-1 decision, which hardly ever happens, what justice is, wanting to hang themselves out there like that and lose an 8-1 decision. But of course, she's too dumb to know that's a bad thing. She ruled that this conversion therapy law, i.e. counselors in Colorado, were being banned from telling kids that their gender they were born as. If you're born a boy, these counselors were banned from telling them, yeah, well, that's because you're a boy and you need to come to terms with that and deal with it. And they called that conversion therapy. If a kid comes to you as a counselor and says, well, I feel like a girl, I think I'm trans, you weren't allowed to say, no, you're not a girl, you're a boy, and we need to figure out what's going wrong. You have gender dysmorphia, which is a mental health issue, and we need to treat that to help you. Okay. They weren't allowed to go that all. It's like telling an anorexic person, yeah, you actually are fat. We're going to affirm how you feel. You might be starving to death, but I'm required by law to tell you, yes, you are actually fat, and starving yourself is a good thing because you're going to get diabetes if you don't. That obviously that's just the stupidest shit ever. Or it's like telling somebody who's suicidal, yeah, maybe you should kill yourself. I should affirm your beliefs. Colorado tried to make that mandatory, that you had to affirm people's mental illness, children's mental illnesses nonetheless. And so the Supreme Court said, obviously, no, you can't tell counselors or anybody that the government can't tell you that you can't say anything. As long as you're not hurting other people, you are allowed to say what you want. The government has no power to tell you that you can't tell the truth to a kid about their gender or anybody else. Government can't tell you that you can't tell a man wearing a dress that he's a fucking man. Because, yeah, you can. The government doesn't get to tell you otherwise. So she is willing to sign her name to an opinion that goes out there and says, yeah, actually, the government should be able to tell you what you can and can't say, even in a healthcare setting, which should scare the shit out of everybody. Because if you got a few more of those crackpots on the Supreme Court, we'd have the Constitution be gone. There'd be no Second Amendment. There'd be no First Amendment. There'd be soldiers living in your home. There'd be nothing. She'd go after every single amendment she could in the Bill of Rights because she detests our country. That's how else can you interpret an attack on the First Amendment like the opinion she wrote in the Colorado case? There's no other way to interpret it. She's a crazy person. So that's it. That's the take on the Supreme Court for right now, and our wonderful DEI justice who I'm not sure she's got. There might be some 9-0 decisions she's got right, but unless it's 9-0, you can guarantee she's on the wrong side. Any one of us could do a better job than that. I'd rather see the crackhead that lives in front of the grocery store in my neighborhood be on the Supreme Court than this lady. The opinions would be more coherent, without a doubt. And I guarantee you the crackhead loves the country more. Guarantee it. All right, we're out of here, guys. That's it. We've had enough of the Supreme Court madness.